The transport ship groaned like a dying beast as it settled onto the metallic landing pad of Station Krell 7. Inside the cargo hold, among crates of exotic minerals and biological specimens, sat one particular item that had caused quite a stir throughout the galaxy. A human. Well, Captain Zorak hissed, his serpentine tongue flicking out to taste the stale air. The legendary terror of the cosmos. Look at it, barely breathing, probably dying from our atmosphere already. The human, who went by the name Jake, lifted his head slowly. His brown eyes met the captain's 6 yellow ones without flinching. Actually, your air tastes like old socks mixed with burnt coffee, but I'll manage. A chorus of clicks, growls, and mechanical whirs filled the cargo bay as the assembled aliens burst into what passed for laughter in their respective species. Zorak's scaled chest heaved with amusement. Oh, it speaks. And it has jokes. How delightfully primitive. Primitive? Jake raised an eyebrow, a gesture that seemed to confuse several of the watching creatures. That's rich coming from someone who apparently never heard of dental hygiene. The laughter died instantly. Zorak's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. You dare insult a Dracorian royal guard? I have conquered 17 worlds and eaten the hearts of 1,000 enemies. Congratulations, Jake said dryly. I once ate a whole pizza by myself. We're all very impressive here. The tension in the cargo bay could have been cut with a plasma blade. Several aliens took unconscious steps backward, expecting their captain to incinerate the insolent human on the spot. Instead, Zorak threw back his reptilian head and laughed so hard his scales rattled. This one has fire in its belly. Perfect. The arena masters will be most entertained before it dies. Jake's expression remained unchanged, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Before I die? That's awfully presumptuous of you, Captain. Tell me, in all those conquests of yours, how many humans have you actually fought? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zorak's laughter faltered slightly. Humans are a myth, a legend used to frighten younglings. Creatures of impossible strength and cunning who supposedly once ruled the Outer Rim. But look at you, soft skin, no claws, no natural weapons. You are nothing but stories made flesh. Stories, Jake repeated thoughtfully. Yeah, we humans are good at those. We also happen to be very good at making them come true. Commander Vex, a towering insectoid with mandibles that could crush steel, stepped forward. His voice buzzed like a swarm of angry hornets. Enough talk. The specimen needs to be processed for the combat initiative. Lord Malger is expecting fresh entertainment for the Trisolar Games. The combat initiative? Jake's voice carried a note of genuine interest. That sounds fun. What exactly does that involve? Vex's compound eyes glittered with anticipation. Gladiatorial combat against the finest warriors in the galaxy. Species from across the known universe compete for glory and freedom. Most contestants last perhaps 30 seconds before being torn apart. Most contestants, Jake nodded slowly, and the survivors are granted immediate release and safe passage to any world of their choosing, Zorak interjected. Of course, in 300 years of games, there have been exactly 0 survivors. Jake's lips curved into something that might have been a smile, but felt more like a predator baring its teeth. Well, I do love to be the first of things. The processing chamber on Station Krell 7 was designed to intimidate. Massive screens displayed the gruesome fates of previous contestants, while mechanical arms performed invasive scans on new arrivals. Jake submitted to procedures with an almost bored expression, making small talk with the terrified technicians. So, what's your mortality rate for humans specifically? He asked Dr. Quinzel, a gray-skinned creature whose 4 arms moved with practiced efficiency. Unknown, she replied in a voice like grinding metal. You are the first human we have encountered in over 2 centuries. Interesting. And where exactly did you find me? Drifting in a damaged escape pod near the Helix Nebula. Your ship appeared to have suffered catastrophic engine failure. Jake's expression grew thoughtful. My ship, right? That's definitely what happened. Dr. Quinzel paused in her examination. The readings are unusual. Your physical parameters suggest you should be dead. Exposure to hard vacuum, radiation poisoning, starvation. Yet here you are, showing no signs of distress. I'm resilient, Jake shrugged. It's a human thing. Indeed, your bone density is remarkable. Your muscle fiber composition is unlike anything in our databases, and your neural activity. She trailed off, staring at the scanner readings. This cannot be correct. What's wrong? According to these readings, your brain is operating at approximately 12% of theoretical maximum efficiency. This suggests either massive trauma or, she paused, looking confused, or this is your species' normal state. Jake's grin widened. Doctor, you have no idea what normal means for humans. The holding cells beneath the arena were a symphony of roars, shrieks, and mechanical humming. Jake found himself in a cell between a crystalline entity that sang in frequencies that made his teeth ache and a massive furry creature that smelled like a combination of wet dog and sulfur. Fresh meat, growled his furry neighbor, whose name was apparently Grok. You smell weak. Grok will eat you first if we are placed in the same combat group. That's very considerate of you, Grok, Jake replied pleasantly. I appreciate the heads up. Grok's confusion was palpable. You're not afraid? Should I be? I mean, you're about 8 feet tall, covered in what looks like armor-plated fur, and you have claws that could probably shred steel. On the other hand, I'm a human. I do not understand. You will... The crystalline entity, who called itself resonance, chimed in with a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. The flesh creature speaks strangely. It shows no fear patterns, no stress hormones. This is not normal behavior for prey species. Prey species? Jake laughed, and the sound carried an edge that made both his neighbors shuffle away from the cell walls. Oh, my friend, you have that exactly backwards. Training day arrived with all the pomp and circumstance the galaxy's premier gladiatorial organization could muster. Holographic banners proclaimed the glory of combat, while vendors sold overpriced snacks to the gathering crowd. Jake was escorted to the training grounds by a squad of heavily armed guards who seemed nervous despite their superior numbers and firepower. Master Thane, the arena's chief combat instructor, was a legend in his own right. Part machine, part organic tissue, and entirely deadly, he had trained champions for over 50 years. His cybernetic, I focused on Jake with the precision of a targeting computer. So, his voice was a mechanical rasp. You are the human. I have heard much about your species. All of it contradictory. People do like to exaggerate, Jake agreed. What exactly have you heard? That humans are weak, soft, helpless creatures who rely on primitive tools and cunning to survive. Also that humans are unstoppable predators who conquered half the galaxy through sheer brutality and impossible determination. Both those things are true, Jake said matter-of-factly. Master Thane's organic eye narrowed. Explain. Humans are contradictions. We're the species that will cry over a dying flower and then glass an entire planet because someone threatened our friends. We're weak enough that a house cat can injure us and strong enough to survive things that would kill creatures 10 times our size. We're individuals who can't agree on anything in a collective force that has never been successfully conquered. You speak in riddles. I speak in truth. The riddle is that most of the galaxy has forgotten what humans actually are. The training ground was a marvel of engineering, capable of simulating any environment from the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres to the frozen wastes of dead worlds. Jake's first opponent was a Cortharian battle drone, 8 feet of armored killing machine designed to test a contestant's basic combat reflexes. Standard procedure. Master Thane announced to the gathering crowd of trainers and observers. The drone will engage at minimum lethality settings. Contestants typically last between 30 seconds and 2 minutes before requiring medical intervention. Jake rolled his shoulders and cracked his knuckles. What's the record? 7 minutes, 43 seconds. Achieved by a Zentorian berserker who stood 9 feet tall and weighed 400 pounds. Noted, the drone activated with mechanical whine, its sensors locking onto Jake's heat signature. Advanced targeting systems calculated optimal strike patterns while its weapon systems armed themselves. Jake stood perfectly still, hands at his sides, watching the machine with the focused attention of a predator sizing up its prey. The drone struck with inhuman speed, its bladed appendages slicing through the air where Jake's head had been a microsecond before. He moved like liquid lightning, flowing around the machine's attacks with an economy of motion that seemed almost lazy. Every dodge was minimal, every step perfectly placed. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Quinzel, who was monitoring from the observation deck. "His reaction time is faster than our equipment can measure." The drone recalibrated, increasing its speed and aggression. Jake's response was to smile, not the friendly expression he had worn during their conversations, but something primal and terrifying. The machine launched a complex attack sequence, multiple blades striking from different angles in a pattern that should have been impossible to evade. Jake caught the central blade with his bare hand. The observation deck fell silent. Even the drone seemed confused, its system struggling to process what had happened. Jake's grip tightened, and the advanced alloy began to crumple like paper. "You know what the funny thing is?" Jake said conversationally, still holding the struggling machine. "Humans aren't actually the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the fastest or the toughest or the smartest. We're just the most stubborn." He twisted his wrist, and the drone's blade shattered. The machine's backup systems activated, launching a desperate barrage of energy blasts at point-blank range. Jake stepped into the attack, letting the energy wash over him like a warm breeze. "See, the thing about humans," he continued, casually dismantling the drone piece by piece, "is that we don't know when to quit. We don't have an off switch. We don't have a maximum setting. We just keep going until either we win or we die." The drone's final weapon, a plasma cutter designed to slice through starship hulls, activated with a sound like screaming metal. Jake caught it between his thumb and forefinger, the deadly energy beam flickering and dying. "And sometimes," he said, looking directly at Master Thane, "we don't even stop when we die." The training ground was utterly silent, except for the sound of falling mechanical debris. Jake stood in the center of the destruction, completely unharmed, his clothes not even singed. He looked up at the observation deck and smiled that terrible smile. "So," he called out, his voice carrying easily through the chamber, "what's next?" Master Thane's cybernetic systems ran diagnostic checks, tried to make sense of what they had recorded. The readings were impossible. The human had moved faster than their best sensors could track, demonstrated strength that defied physics, and showed no signs of fatigue or injury despite being subjected to weapons that could level buildings. "Bring out the vanguard," Master Thane ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The crowd of observers began to murmur nervously. The vanguard was a combat mech designed for planetary assault, equipped with weapons that could crack fortress walls and armor that could withstand direct hits from starship weapons. It was used only for the most elite combat training, and had never been deployed against a single organic opponent. "Are you certain?" asked Commander Vex, his mandibles clicking with anxiety. "The Vanguard has no minimum lethality settings. It is designed to kill." "I know exactly what it's designed to do," Master Thane replied, his organic, I never leaving Jake's relaxed form. "The question is whether our human friend knows what he is." Jake looked up as the massive mech descended from the ceiling on repulsor platforms. 30 feet of death and destruction, bristling with enough firepower to level a small city. He stretched his arms above his head and yawned. "Now this," he said with genuine appreciation, "looks like fun." The Vanguard's AI was sophisticated enough to analyze threats and adjust its tactics accordingly. It scanned Jake with every sensor at its disposal, trying to understand what it was facing. The results were perplexing. The organic appeared to be a standard humanoid, showing no obvious weapons or armor, no energy signatures that would indicate special abilities. It was nothing more than meat and bone and blood. The mech's first attack was a test, a single plasma bolt designed to gauge the target's defensive capabilities. Jake tilted his head slightly, and the bolt passed harmlessly by his ear. The Vanguard's AI processed this information and concluded that the organic had been fortunate. It increased the intensity of its attack. A barrage of energy blasts filled the air where Jake had been standing. The human was suddenly 20 feet to the left, still looking relaxed, still smiling. The AI recalculated and launched a spread pattern that covered the entire training ground. Jake was somehow in the exact center of the pattern, occupying the one spot that remained untouched. The Vanguard systems began to register something approaching concern. This level of evasion was not possible for unaugmented organics. The target had to be using some form of technology. A personal shield, perhaps, or a short-range teleportation device. It switched to kinetic weapons, launching a hail of depleted uranium projectiles at velocities that would punch through starship armor. Jake caught one of the projectiles mid-flight, examined it with the interest of a collector studying a rare coin, then flicked it back at the mech. The projectile struck the Vanguard's chest armor with enough force to send the 30-foot machine stumbling backward. "Okay," Jake said, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. "Now I'm warmed up." He launched himself at the mech with a burst of speed that left a sonic boom in his wake. The Vanguard's AI had microseconds to react, bringing its defensive systems online and preparing for impact. Jake hit the machine like a meteorite, his fist connecting with the center of its chest armor. The sound was like a mountain falling. The Vanguard's chest plate, composed of materials that could withstand direct nuclear bombardment, cracked like an eggshell. The machine's AI experienced something that could only be described as shock. This was not possible. The organic was displaying strength levels that exceeded the theoretical maximum for any known species. Jake drove his fist deeper into the machine's chest, his arm disappearing up to the elbow in a maze of sparking circuits and twisted metal. "You know what I love about machines?" he said conversationally, even as the mech's defensive systems tried desperately to dislodge him. "They're so logical, so predictable. They follow rules." He twisted his arm, and the Vanguard's primary power core began to whine with overload warnings. "The problem with fighting humans," Jake continued, "is that we never learn the rules." The observation deck was in chaos. Alien scientists and military officers shouted over each other, trying to make sense of what they were witnessing. Dr. Quinzel's scanners had given up entirely, simply displaying error messages as they try to process the impossible readings. "This is not possible." Commander Vex buzzed frantically. "No organic creature can generate that level of kinetic force." "Clearly," Master Thane replied with mechanical calm, "our understanding of human physiology is incomplete." Jake ripped the Vanguard's power core from its housing. The glowing orb would contain energy pulsing with enough power to level several city blocks. He held it up to the light, admiring the way it cast rainbow patterns on the walls. "Pretty," he said, then crushed it between his palms. The explosion should have vaporized everything within a 100-meter radius. Instead, the energy seemed to flow into Jake, absorbed by his body like water into a sponge. He glowed for a moment, his skin radiating with soft blue light. Then the energy faded. "Much better," he said, flexing his fingers. I was starting to feel a bit peckish. The Vanguard, now nothing more than a 30-foot pile of scrap metal, toppled over with a crash that shook the entire training facility. Jake stepped out of the wreckage, brushing dust from his clothes, and looked up at the observation deck expectantly. "Well," he called out, "what's next?" "I'm just getting started." Master Thane's cybernetic systems were running at maximum capacity, trying to process the implications of what he had witnessed. The human had not simply defeated the Vanguard. He had absorbed its power source, integrated the energy into his own biological systems without any apparent side effects. "What are you?" Master Thane asked, his voice carrying across the training ground. Jake's expression grew thoughtful. "That's a complicated question. What am I today? I'm a human who's been stranded in space for longer than most species have existed. I'm tired, I'm hungry, and I'm starting to remember why I chose to sleep for the last few centuries." He paused, looking around at the assembled aliens with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than his apparent age. "But mostly I'm disappointed. I had hoped that the galaxy might have evolved beyond the need for gladiatorial combat and the subjugation of sentient beings. It seems I was overly optimistic." "You speak as if you have lived for centuries," Dr. Quinzel observed. "Human lifespans are not that extensive." "Doctor," Jake said with a sad smile, "you're thinking of baseline humans." "I'm not baseline." The implications of the statement hung in the air like a physical weight. Throughout the galaxy, stories persisted of the time before, when humans had walked among the stars as peers to the great galactic civilizations. Those stories spoke of incredible technology, impossible achievements, and humans who seemed to possess abilities that bordered on the supernatural. They also spoke of why those humans had disappeared. "The Great Silence," breathed Commander Vex. "You are from the Great Silence." Jake nodded slowly. "The Great Silence. Is that what you call it?" "I suppose that's accurate enough. We called it the Long Sleep, a time to rest, to let the galaxy heal, to see what would grow in our absence. The legends say that humans retreated from the galaxy because they had grown too powerful, too dangerous to coexist with other species." "The legends," Jake said with a bitter laugh, "are wrong. We didn't retreat because we were too powerful. We retreated because we were too human." He walked to the center of the training ground, standing in the exact spot where the vanguard had fallen. "We cared too much. We felt too deeply. Every injustice, every act of cruelty, every unnecessary death had all weighed on us. We were trying to save everyone, to fix everything, to make the galaxy a perfect place." Jake's voice grew quiet, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. "Do you know what happens when humans try to save everyone? We end up destroying everything we touch. So we made a choice. We chose to step back, to let the galaxy find its own path, to sleep until we were needed again." "And now you are awake," Master Thane observed. "Now I am awake," Jake agreed. "Which means the galaxy has reached a point where it needs saving again. And this time, I'm not going to be gentle about it." The training ground fell silent, except for the sound of cooling metal and the distant hum of the station's life support systems. Jake stood alone in the center of the destruction, a single human surrounded by the wreckage of machines designed to kill gods. "So," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries and the promise of storms to come, "who wants to explain to me exactly what this combat initiative is really about?" The silence stretched on, filled with the kind of tension that precedes earthquakes and the fall of empires. In the observation deck, alien minds struggled to process the reality of what they had witnessed. The human was not just strong or fast or resilient. The human was awake. And somewhere in the depths of space, other humans were beginning to stir.